You may think the world outside is your enemy. You may believe your struggles begin and end with people, money, circumstances, or time. But what if the real war is happening within the four quiet walls of your own mind? From the moment we wake up, there's a subtle noise. It's not the sound of traffic or birds chirping. It's not the clinking of dishes or the hum of your phone. It's the voice inside you, the one that whispers doubts, the one that screams worries, the one that tells you you're too late, not enough, always behind. That voice, that's your battlefield. Buddhism doesn't ask us to destroy that voice. It invites us to understand it, to observe it, to ask, is this voice even mine? Because most of us live our entire lives as prisoners of thoughts we never chose, stories planted by fear, narratives fueled by insecurity, memories dressed up as truth. And so we suffer, not because the world is cruel, but because we've never questioned the lens through which we see it. That's the silent war raging inside. And like any war, it comes at a cost. It steals your peace in the morning. It hijacks your calm in traffic. It floods your heart with anxiety when you're alone. And just when you think you've won, it returns at night as a whisper. You're not doing enough. You see, the mind is not your enemy. But an untrained mind is a dangerous master. It will convince you that success equals happiness, that love must be earned, that rest equals laziness, that your worth is measured by comparison. And once you believe these illusions, you'll spend your whole life chasing shadows. But what if, just what if, the mind could be trained? The Buddha once said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. What you think, you become." This isn't just poetry, it's a blueprint. Imagine this. Your thoughts, instead of attacking you, begin to serve you. Instead of waking up in panic, you wake up in peace. Instead of drowning in overthinking, you ride each moment like a gentle wave. Imagine being still, even in chaos. That's not fantasy. That's the power of a trained mind. And training doesn't mean force. It doesn't mean suppression. It means attention. It means awareness. It means realizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes them. That subtle shift from being your mind to witnessing your mind is where freedom begins. In fact, real strength isn't found in controlling others. It's found in mastering yourself. And self-mastery starts in the quiet trenches of your inner world, where your fears live, where your wounds hide, where your thoughts roam free like untamed horses. So many of us try to fix the world outside. We decorate our homes, chase promotions, end toxic relationships, buy self-help books. But until we sit down and truly meet our own mind, we are simply rearranging furniture inside a burning house. What makes this inner battle so dangerous is that it's invisible. You can walk around smiling, working, achieving, and inside you're at war. A war no one sees, but you feel it. In your bones, in your breath. In the quiet moments no one knows about. That's why the battlefield is not out there. It's not in the office. It's not in your relationship. It's not even in your past. It's here. Now, inside you. And the bravest thing you will ever do is not fight others, but sit with your own mind and listen, without judgment, without reaction, just presence. That is the beginning of peace. And from that peace, something new can grow. A kind of clarity that doesn't panic in uncertainty. A strength that isn't loud but unshakable. A joy that doesn't rely on winning or validation. A silence more powerful than noise. Because once you see the mind for what it is, a tool, not a tyrant, you begin to take back your life. And in that moment, you don't just survive the battlefield. You rise above it. They come like shadows at dusk, your thoughts. Some whisper, some scream, some masquerade as truth. And before you know it, you're dragged into their current like a leaf caught in a stream, believing that what you think is who you are. But here's the thing that Zen masters have whispered across centuries, across monasteries, across the stillness of countless meditation halls. You are not your thoughts. Let that sink in. Just because a thought arises doesn't make it true. Just because your mind conjures up worry doesn't mean the future is doomed. Just because a voice inside says, "I'm not enough," doesn't mean it's your voice or your reality. In the Zen tradition, the mind is often likened to a wild monkey, restless, erratic, jumping from one branch of worry to another, rarely pausing long enough to understand anything deeply. This monkey mind creates illusions, attaches to stories, and traps us in identities we never truly chose. But imagine stepping back, just a little, and watching that monkey without feeding it bananas. Imagine realizing that just because the monkey screams doesn't mean you have to obey. This is the Zen way. Zen doesn't ask you to fight your thoughts. It asks you to observe them, to see them as clouds drifting across the sky of awareness. You are the sky. Your thoughts are just the weather, sometimes stormy, sometimes bright, always changing, never permanent. The great Zen master Huang Po once said, "When the mind does not dwell on things, true nature shines through." In simpler terms, when you stop clinging to thoughts, your real self, calm, luminous, vast, begins to emerge. Let's go deeper. Have you ever caught yourself spiraling in thought, perhaps lying in bed at 2 a.m., reliving a conversation that happened days ago? Maybe you thought, "Why did I say that? What if they misunderstood? I always mess things up." Suddenly, you're not in your bed anymore. You're trapped inside a narrative your mind constructed, and you're the villain, the victim, and the judge all at once. Now pause. In that very moment, if you could take just one breath and instead of following the thought, watch it. Like a movie playing on a distant screen, something shifts. The suffering begins to dissolve. Why? Because you've remembered. The thought isn't you. It's a mental event, not your identity. This ability to step back, what Zen calls non-identification, is like discovering an inner sanctuary where peace isn't just possible, it's already present. You may wonder, but if I'm not my thoughts, then who am I? Now you're asking the right question. Zen doesn't give you an easy answer. It doesn't offer a definition you can write down and memorize. Instead, it invites you into direct experience. Sit still, breathe, watch the thoughts arise and dissolve, again and again. Eventually, what remains isn't a thought. It's you, not the you who worries or plans or labels or judges, but the silent awareness behind it all, timeless, spacious, awake. Let's illustrate this with a simple metaphor from a Zen story. A young monk approached his master and asked, "Master, how can I attain peace when my thoughts never stop?" The master replied, "Sit by the river and watch it flow." So the monk did. Hours passed. He returned and said, "I watched it, but the water never stopped." The master smiled. Exactly. The river is your mind. The current is your thought. You don't have to stop the flow. You just stop diving in. Peace doesn't come from damming the river. It comes from stepping onto the shore. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop identifying with your thoughts, you don't become less of yourself. You become more grounded, more alive, more present. You laugh more because you're no longer trapped in old mental loops. You breathe deeper because you're no longer choking on imagined futures. You love more fully because you're no longer tangled in egoic stories. This is the quiet revolution that happens when you realize you're not the voice in your head. You're the silence underneath it. And when you begin to live from that silence, something miraculous unfolds. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop clinging. You start flowing. Now, let's turn our attention to a question that inevitably arises when we realize we are not our thoughts. If we are not our thoughts, then where does suffering truly come from? And how do we free ourselves, not just momentarily but deeply, lastingly, from that inner torment. Let's explore this in the next chapter. Have you ever walked into a dark room and felt a twinge of fear until you flicked on the light? Suddenly, nothing changed about the room itself. The shadows were still there, the furniture was still unmoved, and yet, with just one flick of a switch, your fear dissolved. That's what awareness does in the landscape of your mind. It's not about eliminating the darkness. It's about learning how to carry the light. In Zen, this light is sati, mindfulness, the gentle, moment-to-moment awareness that doesn't judge, doesn't grasp, and doesn't run. It simply sees. And in that seeing, you find power. But let's get something clear. Awareness is not thinking about your thoughts. That's analysis. That's more noise. True awareness is the quiet watcher behind the noise, the one who notices the rising and falling of each mental wave without becoming the wave itself. Imagine you're sitting in traffic and anger starts to bubble up. In your usual mode, you'd clench your jaw, curse under your breath, maybe honk at the car ahead. But with awareness, something incredible happens. You catch the anger before it explodes. You see it arising like steam rising off a pot. You don't judge it, you don't suppress it. You just notice. Ah, here comes anger. I see you. In that moment, you've already begun to break the cycle. That is the miracle of mindfulness. You're not denying the emotion. You're not running from it. You're shining the light of awareness directly onto it, and that light has the power to dissolve even the darkest habits of the mind. The Buddha compared awareness to a lamp placed in the middle of a room. It doesn't have to fight the darkness, it simply reveals it. In that illumination, you can navigate, you can choose, and most importantly, you can respond rather than react. This is why mindfulness isn't some passive state. It's one of the most courageous acts a human being can engage in. To sit still, fully awake, and observe what's happening inside you without turning away, that's strength. That's clarity. That's liberation. But here's the subtle beauty. Awareness doesn't need you to fix anything. It doesn't demand improvement. It asks only that you be present, truly present with what is. Whether that's pain, pleasure, boredom, joy, or confusion. And the more you practice this kind of seeing, the more you begin to experience a space between stimulus and response. A breath, a sacred pause, and within that pause lies your freedom. Freedom from habit, freedom from reactivity, freedom from the prison of automatic thinking. Even science now backs this up. Neuroscientific studies show that practicing mindfulness, consistent, deliberate awareness, can literally change the structure of your brain. The amygdala, responsible for fear and aggression, shrinks. The prefrontal cortex, associated with decision-making and empathy, becomes more active. You're not just imagining your transformation, you're rewiring your nervous system. But in Zen, we don't practice awareness for the sake of performance or productivity. We practice it because it's the gateway to truth. When you see clearly, you suffer less. And when you suffer less, you create less suffering for others. So how do you begin? Not by trying to control your thoughts, not by pushing them away, but by returning again and again to this moment, to the breath, to the body, to the sensation of feet on the ground or wind on the face. Simple, ordinary anchors that ground you in now. And when your mind wanders, and it will, don't scold it. That wandering is not failure. The act of noticing it and returning, that is the practice. Every return is a strengthening. Every moment of awareness is another candle lit in the darkness. You might still feel pain. You might still get angry, but now you are aware of it. And that changes everything. Because the difference between being in the storm and watching the storm from the shore is all the difference in the world. And once you begin to taste this clarity, you'll realize something profound. You are no longer the passenger of your mind. You are the witness, the light, the the stillness in the center of the swirl, and that light, once awakened, begins to illuminate every part of your life. It shows up in how you speak to others, in how you treat yourself, in how you move through joy and loss, through noise and silence. Because when awareness becomes your companion, no moment is wasted. Even suffering becomes a teacher. Even silence becomes sacred. And when you no longer fear the dark, you don't need to run. You simply carry your own light. Let's walk a little deeper. There's something profound waiting just beneath the surface of your everyday experience. Something Zen has pointed to for centuries. Something that transforms how you listen, how you speak, and how you see the world. Let's begin to uncover it together. Sometimes we don't even realize we're trapped. Not in a prison with bars and walls, but in something far more invisible, the loops of our own thinking. Day after day, the same anxious narratives, the same self-doubt, the same critical voices echo in our minds. And like a well-worn path in the forest, these mental trails become easier and easier to follow, until we believe there is no other way. But what if I told you that just becoming aware of the path is the beginning of stepping off it? You see, negative thoughts are not the enemy. In Zen, they're more like messengers of visitors that come and go. The real trouble begins when we mistake these passing clouds for the sky itself. Let's pause for a moment and look closer. You might have a thought like, "I'm not good enough." It feels real, heavy, and personal. But is it truly yours? Or is it a voice you inherited from a parent's disapproval, from schoolyard ridicule, from a society constantly measuring worth? Zen invites us to ask, who is thinking this thought? Not to get tangled in philosophy, but to create a moment of space. Because in that space, something extraordinary happens. You remember that you are not the thought. You are the awareness behind it. And once that's clear, the power that thought had over you begins to dissolve. It's not about fighting the negativity or replacing it with toxic positivity. It's about watching, observing, challenging, yes, but gently, like questioning a friend who's always been a little too harsh. You can ask, is this thought absolutely true? What evidence do I really have for it? Is there another way to see this? Let me give you an example. Imagine someone receives a rejection letter. Their immediate thought, "I'm a failure, I'll never succeed." This thought comes so quickly, they don't even notice it. But if they just pause and look at it, they might realize, wait, I got rejected from one opportunity. That doesn't define my entire worth. Rejection is part of growth. And in that simple shift, they've broken the pattern. Not by force, not by pretending everything is fine, but by refusing to believe the first story the mind offers. This is how change begins, not with grand revolutions, but with quiet rebellions. Every time you interrupt that loop, you plant a new seed, one of compassion, one of clarity, one of courage. Zen doesn't ask you to never have a negative thought again. That's impossible and not the point. The point is, don't become a slave to those thoughts. Don't let them run your life on autopilot. Recognize them, question them, smile at them if you can, and gently, persistently choose something different. You are not broken because your mind offers you darkness. You are powerful because you can choose to bring in light. And sometimes, breaking the pattern is not about being fearless, but about being present enough to say, this thought is not who I am. I choose to walk another way. That simple act, that's how transformation begins. Quietly, steadily, and from deep within. And as you begin to break these patterns not once but again and again, you may notice something remarkable. A subtle shift in the way you see the world, in how you respond, in the emotional weight you carry. That shift doesn't scream or demand attention. It whispers, and it sounds a lot like peace. Now, in those quiet moments when the thoughts return, as they always do, you'll meet them differently. Not with fear, but with presence. not with panic but with perspective. And in that simple meeting, you reclaim your mind. Let's explore what that actually looks like, not just in meditation, but in the messy, chaotic moments of everyday life. Moments where awareness becomes more than a concept, it becomes your greatest tool. Sometimes the most important conversations in life are the ones no one else hears. They happen in silence, in the quiet space between a thought and a breath, and they don't involve anyone else's voice but your own. This is your inner dialogue. For most people, that voice inside, the one narrating your every move, judging your actions, replaying the past, worrying about the future, is left completely unchecked. It runs wild like an untamed animal. Sometimes it's loud and frantic, other times it's subtle but relentless. And if we're not careful, we start to mistake that voice for truth. But Zen Buddhism invites us to listen differently, not with fear, not with resistance, but with presence, with stillness. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a classroom. The thoughts come and go like students, some rowdy, some lost, some brilliant. And in the midst of all this noise, the teacher walks in, awareness. That teacher doesn't shout or demand silence. Instead, it observes. It gently brings order through presence, not by force, but by simply being there. You see, the problem isn't that we talk to ourselves. The problem is we never learned how to listen to that voice wisely. We often allow our inner dialogue to be shaped by the past, what someone once said to us, what society expects, what fear whispers late at night. And over time, these old recordings play on a loop, repeating limiting beliefs. You're not good enough. You'll always fail. Don't even try. But ask yourself, whose voice is that really? Is it truly you, or is it just a shadow from long ago? Zen reminds us that we don't have to obey every voice in our head. In fact, we can become the teacher within our own minds. Not a harsh critic, but a compassionate guide. A quiet strength, a wise presence. So how do we begin? Start by noticing how you speak to yourself when you fail. Do you berate yourself? Or do you offer understanding? When you're anxious, do you judge your fear? Or do you sit with it, like a friend who needs comfort? The way you speak to yourself in those vulnerable moments matters more than you think, because those inner conversations shape how you experience the world. And more importantly, they shape your sense of self. One powerful practice is this. When you catch a negative or limiting thought, pause and ask, would I say this to a dear friend? If not, why say it to yourself? This simple habit of questioning your own inner commentary can completely transform your inner world. You begin to shift from being a victim of your thoughts to becoming the wise teacher they've been waiting for. In Zen, the goal isn't to silence the mind completely. That's a myth. The goal is to understand it, to sit with it like a student eager to learn. And the lesson, that every thought, every emotion, every internal dialogue is an opportunity to practice presence, to grow compassion, to remember your true nature, because beneath all the noise, beneath the doubts and distractions, there is a stillness, a clarity, a teacher within. And when you learn to listen to that voice, the voice of your higher self, everything changes. The battlefield becomes a classroom. Your mind becomes your ally. And you become your own best teacher. But to teach well, you must first understand the lesson most people avoid. And that brings us to what lies just beneath the surface of our thoughts, the hidden emotions they're often protecting. Let's go deeper. Have you ever sat in complete silence and suddenly realized that your mind has been whispering to you all day long? Not in grand pronouncements, not in obvious outbursts, but in subtle, sneaky murmurs, judgments, worries, memories, predictions, distractions. The human mind is a constant commentator. It feeds us a steady stream of input from the moment we wake up. And just like our bodies react to what we eat, Our minds are shaped by what we consume mentally. Imagine this. You wouldn't eat spoiled food knowingly, right? So why allow your mind to digest anger, fear, envy, and noise, day in, day out? In Zen, we say, your mind becomes what it absorbs. Just as water takes the shape of the vessel it's poured into, your thoughts, emotions, and worldview take shape from the mental diet you allow. Let's sit with that for a moment. From the moment we open our eyes, we are bombarded. Social media scrolls, endless news loops, gossip, complaints, self-criticism, perfectionism masked as productivity. These aren't just harmless distractions, they're toxins. And over time, they accumulate just like poison in the body. We must ask ourselves, what am I feeding my mind today? Because here's the truth, garbage in, garbage out, peace in, peace out. You might not control every single external trigger, but you do control the channels you keep open. You choose what enters your internal temple. Let's look deeper. When we keep exposing ourselves to comparison, what happens? Our self-worth slowly corrodes. When we feed on outrage and fear-driven media, what blooms in us? Anxiety, defensiveness, tension. When we dwell in past regrets or future fears, what fades? Presence, joy, aliveness. But on the other hand, what happens when you feed your mind stillness? When you nourish it with compassion, gratitude, simplicity, a different kind of landscape begins to grow inside you. Zen doesn't demand that you empty your mind of all input. It simply asks that you become intentional. Even something as simple as sitting with your breath for a few minutes before checking your phone in the morning can begin to detox the patterns. Instead of feeding the mind more noise, feed it space. Instead of replaying angry conversations, replay the sound of rain on your roof. Instead of bathing in the drama of others, let your attention fall into the silence between your thoughts. This is the shift from mindless absorption to mindful selection. Every time you say no to a distraction, you're saying yes to mental clarity. Every time you choose quiet over chaos, you're cleaning your internal mirror. You're not just reacting to the world anymore, you're responding from a deeper awareness. And here's a powerful image from the Zen tradition. Imagine your mind is a still lake. Every negative thought, every bit of drama is like a stone tossed into that lake, rippling, disturbing, muddying the water. But when you stop tossing stones, when you let the surface settle, you begin to see the reflection of the moon clearly. That clarity, that is your original mind. So how do you detox your mind in practical terms? Start small. You don't need a 10-day retreat or a vow of silence. Create intentional moments of quiet during the day. Replace one negative input with a nourishing one. A walk in nature, a few pages of timeless wisdom, a loving call to a friend. Journal your mental diet like you would track food. What thoughts keep returning? What triggers them? What media do you consume that makes you feel heavy? And most importantly, don't just remove negativity. Replace it. The mind, like nature, abhors a vacuum. If you don't fill it with stillness, the world will fill it with noise. This chapter isn't about escape, it's about awareness. It's not about becoming a monk in a cave, it's about becoming a master in your everyday life. When your mind is clean, your path becomes clear. When your mind is light, your burdens feel lighter. And when your mind is truly free, you stop reacting to life and you start flowing with it. Now, what happens when this clean, nourished mind starts to observe the world again? That's where we head next, into the unseen threads that tie our perceptions to reality. Let's step into the next doorway. What if I told you that the greatest wisdom is not in knowing more, but in simply being, right here, right now? No need to overanalyze, label, or fix, just to be present. That is the art. That is the gateway to freedom. Zen teaches something profound and beautifully simple. Presence is not a technique, it's a way of being. And at the core of this presence lies an ancient principle called mushin. In Japanese, mushin means no mind. But don't misunderstand it. It doesn't mean you're thoughtless or unaware. It means your mind is undisturbed, clear like still water. You act, speak, move, not from reaction, but from deep clarity. It's awareness without interference. Motion without hesitation. Think of a Zen archer. The arrow doesn't leave the bow because of mental effort. It leaves because the mind has dissolved. The archer is the arrow, is the bow, is the silence before release. That's mushin. And here's the radical truth. You don't need to be an archer to live like this. Because every day we are called to show up in life, relationships, work, our own thoughts, and we can either meet it with a racing, resisting mind or with presence. With mushin, let's look at this through mindfulness. Mindfulness is often spoken of in terms of breath, posture, or meditation. But true mindfulness is far more subtle. It's not about sitting still. It's about being still inside, even as the world moves around you. Washing dishes. Be there with the warmth of the water, the sound of the stream. Walking down the street. Be there with each footstep, each breeze brushing your face. Listening to a loved one. Be fully with them, not planning your reply. Not half scrolling your phone, just presence. The more we practice this, the more we begin to notice. Presence softens pain. It silences the voice that constantly says, "You should be somewhere else." It turns ordinary moments into sacred ones. And here's something beautiful. Presence has no ego. It doesn't need to win, prove, or control. It just is. That's why presence is powerful. It allows us to respond instead of react, to love instead of fear, to simply breathe and allow life to unfold. Mushin isn't something you try to achieve. That effort itself creates more mind clutter. Instead, you return to it. Like when a pond settles after a stone is thrown. Like the silence between your thoughts. Like the moment you stop trying and just listen. Here's a simple practice you can try right now. Close your eyes. Take one slow breath in. Exhale. Now do it again, but this time listen to the silence between each breath. Can you sense it? That's stillness. That's mushin. It's always been there, underneath the noise, beneath the worry. You don't create it, you just remember it. And the more you return to it, the more it becomes your natural state. Eventually, presence stops being a practice. It becomes who you are. You'll speak slower, not because you're cautious, but because you're listening. You'll walk with calm, not because life is easy, but because your mind isn't fighting the moment. You'll feel joy, not because something amazing happened, but because you were fully alive in the now. That's the real art, the art of presence, the way of mushin. And when you live this way, your mind becomes like a quiet garden, not overrun with weeds of thought, but open, clear, alive. Every action becomes meditation. Every moment becomes enough. But presence doesn't just heal the mind. It also begins to reveal something deeper about life itself. And as we move forward, you'll begin to see how presence isn't just about calm, it's about truth. And what happens when you stop running from discomfort and instead meet it face to face, fully present. Imagine this. The mind, like a garden, quietly blooms or withers, depending on what we cultivate daily. Not once a year, not only in retreat, but daily. This is where many seekers fall short, not for lack of will, but for lack of rhythm. Discipline is often misunderstood as something rigid. In Zen and Buddhist teachings, discipline is not a cage. It's a dance with the moment. And that dance, it needs music. That music is your daily mental training. Let's begin not with lofty ideals, but with breath. The breath is the first gate. When you rise in the morning, before you reach for your phone, before the world's noise floods in, sit up and breathe. Just 10 conscious breaths. That's it. Feel the coolness as it enters your nostrils. Feel your chest rise. This is not just air. This is returning to center. And as the breath anchors you, let your intention for the day surface. One phrase, one sentence, something like, "Today I meet each moment as it is." Not a to-do list, not a performance mantra, but a dharma-rooted intention. In Sanskrit, this is sankalpa, a vow aligned with your deeper nature. With this, you are not just reacting to the day. You are initiating it from within. Next, movement, not a gym, not a marathon, but mindful motion. Stretch slowly, walk silently, even make tea in silence. Let your body remember what stillness feels like even in action. Zen monks have long practiced kinhin walking meditation as a form of moving zazen. Each footstep becomes a brushstroke of the present moment. You don't need a monastery. Your hallway will do. Your kitchen floor will do. But it's not just about the morning. The real test of mental training is when chaos hits, and it will. A phone call that disturbs, a rude stranger, a painful memory. Here is your training ground. When this happens, don't seek escape, seek observation. In that instant, say to yourself, "This is a wave. I am the ocean." Let awareness flood the mind, not reaction. The mind, like any muscle, builds strength through consistent use. Midday, take a sacred pause, just 2 minutes. Close your eyes, ask, "Where is my mind right now? Is it anxious, scattered, focused?" No judgment, just notice. This alone creates space, and space is where freedom begins. This moment of noticing is meditation in motion, and just as important as beginning your day with awareness is closing it. At night, reflect. Not to analyze, not to punish yourself, but to see clearly. Ask, what did I feed my mind today? Did I speak from ego or from presence? What stirred my peace, and what restored it? This reflection is like cleaning your inner room before sleep. The Buddha taught that self-examination leads to liberation, not judgment, just seeing. Now some might say, but I don't have time for all this. Here's the truth. Your mind trains itself every day with or without you. When you scroll endlessly, complain unconsciously, or chase distraction after distraction, you are already training it to be restless, reactive, and noisy. Mental training isn't about adding. It's about replacing the unconscious with the conscious. Zen is often described as nothing special. But within that nothing, there is a quiet fire, a daily fire. And like any fire, it must be tended gently, regularly, mindfully. That is your responsibility. That is your power. You don't need robes. You don't need incense. You need consistency. Even 10 minutes a day. Even just 3 conscious breaths before speaking. Even just 1 mindful meal. These are not small things. These are sacred acts. Dharma is not theory. Dharma is practice. In the rhythm of daily life, in the pauses you choose, in the thoughts you refuse to believe. Every day is a dojo, every moment is training, and over time the mind begins to shift. You'll see it in your response to anger. You'll feel it in your relationship with time. You'll notice it when silence no longer feels empty, but full of presence. So remember this. The most powerful training is not the one done once in a retreat, but the one done again and again, in ordinary settings, until it becomes who you are. And when mental training becomes second nature, when your inner world becomes aligned with the Dharma, something beautiful happens. Let's now explore that transformation into emotional resilience, peace, and wisdom in the next movement of this journey. In the silence between thoughts, in the stillness beyond the chaos of the mind, there are people, ordinary yet extraordinary, who discovered freedom not by changing the world, but by transforming their relationship to it. Meet Akira, once a high-powered Tokyo executive, crushed by insomnia, panic attacks, and a sense that life was just a hamster wheel of success and collapse. When his physician offered meditation as an alternative to antidepressants, he resisted. "I don't want to sit and do nothing," he scoffed. But desperation softened him. After 6 weeks of just sitting, something changed. His anxiety didn't vanish overnight, but it no longer defined him. "What did change," he said, "was my belief that my thoughts were me." In stillness, he met his mind not as a tyrant but as a guest passing through. Or take Sarah, a retired teacher in her 60s who had battled recurring depression for decades. After her husband's sudden death, she spiraled, but her Zen therapist didn't offer quick fixes. Instead, he handed her a rake and pointed to the temple's gravel garden. "Rake every day, watch your breath." Weeks passed. One day she noticed something, not that her grief had disappeared, but that she no longer feared it. "I had befriended the ache," she later said. "It was still there, but I wasn't drowning in it." The practice gave her agency. She wasn't a broken soul in need of mending. She was a living being learning to sit with the impermanence of all things. Then there's Jamal, a war veteran haunted by trauma, who found in Zen not answers but space. He said, "I used to think my memories would kill me, but on the cushion, I learned I didn't have to react to every thought. I could watch them come and go like clouds over a mountain." With every session of Zazen, he reclaimed pieces of his spirit not by fighting the darkness, but by shining a quiet light. Their stories aren't heroic in the cinematic sense. There are no dragons slain or mountains moved. But these are the true warriors of the way, those who, through mindfulness, presence, and compassion, reclaimed their own minds. What unites them is not perfection, but practice. Not a destination, but the deepening of awareness. They didn't become better versions of themselves. They simply became aware of the patterns that had governed them for years and chose, moment by moment, breath by breath, to let go. In Buddhism, the greatest transformation is often the most invisible, when you stop identifying with the storm and start watching it pass. So if you too have battles within, as we all do, know this. You're not alone. And more importantly, you're not lost. The path back to peace is already beneath your feet. Just sit, just breathe, and return again and again to this very moment. There's a silent revolution that happens when you realize this truth. You are not your mind's prisoner, you are its master. For most people, thoughts appear and vanish without permission, dragging emotions, memories, and reactions behind them. And when those thoughts are negative, repetitive, or fear-based, they become chains, shackles of suffering we don't even know we wear. But here's the liberating truth taught in Zen Buddhism. The mind is like a garden. It can be overgrown with weeds of anxiety and regret, or it can be tended with mindfulness, silence, and intentional presence. The weeds don't define the soil. Just because the mind produces fear, anger, or craving doesn't mean you are fearful, angry, or greedy. The gardener is not the same as the garden. When you become the observer, not the reactor, a shift happens. You begin to see thoughts as passing clouds, not storms you must chase or hide from. Emotions as waves, not floods to drown in. Zen doesn't ask you to destroy the mind, it asks you to see through it. To know its habits, then gently guide it back to silence. To stop identifying with every story it tells. To become the calm, clear sky that watches every storm pass. True mastery doesn't mean controlling every thought. It means not being controlled by them. When you meditate daily, when you breathe deeply and return to now, you build a relationship with your mind. Like a wise teacher guiding a noisy student, not with harshness but with presence, consistency, and compassion. You begin to recognize, I am not these fearful thoughts, I am the awareness that sees them. I am not these memories, I am the silence they echo in. I am not this mind, I am its master. And when that truth settles into your bones, life changes. No longer tossed around by every inner storm. No longer reacting out of habit or pain. Instead, you respond with awareness, intention, and peace. That is true freedom. If this teaching spoke to something deep within you, remember, you are not alone on this path. At Zen Buddhism Wisdom, we walk it together. One breath, one insight, one moment at a time. If this resonated with your heart, consider subscribing. Not for more noise, but for more stillness. Not for answers, but for awakening. Let's continue this journey inward, toward peace, presence, and the wisdom of Zen. Subscribe to Zen Buddhism Wisdom and join thousands choosing a simpler, more mindful life.